we find the Apostle Paul demonstrating a level of transparency that I think is refreshing for the church. Understand that this apostle has to manage the tension of being great while simultaneously remaining grounded. As an apostle, he's got to operate with confidence without ever allowing himself to become conceited. And one of the constant refrains of the Pauline epistles is he always guides the church against the danger of what he calls boasting or glorying or becoming puffed up. And so, saints, this is an interesting text because Paul says, I asked God 3 times for this thing to be removed from me. And God's response is that it's not going to be removed, but I'm going to give you a grace to be able to bear up under the weight of this adversity. And see, I want to just say 4 things about how to handle it when the prayers are not answered the way we like. See, one of the things I've learned the hard way, first thing, is that sometimes God won't remove things that keep you prayerful and close to Him. See, Paul prayed that this thing would be removed from him, but it is literally the thorn that agitates his flesh that helps Paul to operate with a sense of dependence. It is that thorn in his flesh that ushers him to his knees. It is the thorn in his flesh that operates as the driving agent that we talked about earlier this day that keeps him closer to the foot of the cross. And see, the thing that oftentimes we do is sometimes when life gets hard, we'll say, God, I want you to get me out of this, instead of asking God, what do you want me to get out of this? And see, there are some times where we want those pressures and tensions that keep us close to the cross to be removed, but why would God remove those things that keep you close to Him? Does that make sense? In other words, there are certain tensions in your life that God deems necessary and essential to the development of your character and the sanctification of your soul. Are you with me tonight, saints? That's why, because there are certain personalities that some of us try to avoid and elude in life. But have you ever noticed that no matter if you try to leave one church to get away from a certain type of person, when you get to the new church, that same person is at your new church. You may try to leave one job to get away from a personality, but when you get to that new job, that same personality shows up at your new job. And it doesn't matter how many times you divorce and remarry, those same things you were trying to escape are going to show up in every new circumstance you encounter. And what I'm saying to somebody tonight is that sometimes you don't need a new situation, you don't need a new job, you don't need a new church. What you need is a new heart from Jesus Christ. And see, there are times where God refuses to remove those things that are going to keep you close to His side. Does that make sense tonight, church? But understand, what the thorn is inconsequential. What matters is actually the work of the thorn. Because understand that the thorn was not fatal, but it was frustrating. It was not lethal, but it was lingering. It was not terminal, but it was tormenting. And the thing that you've got to understand about your thorn is that its purpose is not to destroy you. Its design is simply to prick you. Its purpose is to create just a little discomfort so that it won't kill you, but it'll frustrate you. It won't kill you, but it'll prick you. It won't kill you, but it'll annoy you. And the thing about the thorn is that it's not punitive. What it literally does is it will kick in so that Paul would feel the pain whenever he started feeling himself.
Good morning, everybody. Just let me put this off. All right. Good morning, everybody, and blessed Sabbath to you. Welcome to this wonderful live broadcast. It's good to be back on YouTube. If you could hear me, just give me a thumbs up in the chat so that I know that the audio and everything is working out well, since I'm really unable to monitor the audio. So at any point, you can let me know if there is something wrong, because I'm actually doing this by myself today. I'm running solo today. But nonetheless, I would like to welcome you to this wonderful broadcast today. We are going to be exploring a wonderful topic, a very interesting topic, one that the world has rejected as a conspiracy theory until certain developments or recent developments are proving otherwise. And it's sad that many persons who would have sounded the alarm as far back in the mid 1950s to 60s, most of them, if not all of them, are not with us today to be able to say, "I told you so." And this generation is basically clueless. They're engrossed in social media. They're engrossed in, everyday life, that they don't even have time to read or to do any sort of research. Technology has basically distracted a whole host of individuals in the world who have no clue why certain things are actually happening in the world today. And so they just wake up in the morning and they go with it. They see the news and they're not even fazed by the news anymore. So a lot is actually happening. And hopefully today we could connect the dots for those persons who do not have the habit to do research or to connect the dots to look at what's happening right now in this world, to be able to say, well, the Bible did say that, and whatnot. And there's this how should I put it? This saying. You may know it, but I'm gonna repeat it for you because this is really what's going to be the basis for our study today. A lot of people tell you, or in fact, the news tells you what is happening in the world. The news report what is happening in the world. But the Bible tells you why it is happening. And if you don't read the Bible and you don't try to understand the Bible, you're not going to know why it is happening. The important question is not what is happening, but why it is happening. Because when you understand why it is happening, you're able to know which direction you want to go. You're better able to make a decision, make certain choices to safeguard your salvation and the salvation of those around you, particularly your loved ones. So, what are we going to, without further ado, what are we going to look at today? And what we will be looking at today is a topic entitled Dawn of the New World Order, Part 1. Now, you hear this title and you go like, but this is a conspiracy, because you see, the thing is, you've heard so many credible or incredible persons in the world, such as past presidents of the United States, several individuals would come out and tell you that the New World Order is just a conspiracy. There isn't this elite cabal set of people who are making plans to take over the world. If you were raised in the 80s and 90s, you would have probably remember a cartoon by the name of what's it called? Pinky and the Brain, and it was like, okay, the brain wanted to take over the world and Pinky was stupid. So you had the dumb versus the intelligent. And that really represents the world today. You have a whole bunch of dumb individuals. When I say dumb, I'm talking about persons with lack of proper knowledge. And then you have a a group of intelligent beings who are actually working behind the scenes to really put in place this global agenda, and they will sell it to you. And this presentation, we are going to explore a couple of hallmarks, a couple of characteristics that I think is going to really open your eyes and to make you understand what is truly happening. All right. So as we get straight into the presentation today, I'd like you to pray with me, pray for me, and also pray for those persons who will be watching this presentation long after it has ended, that they will also receive the blessing. Let us pray. Gracious Father, which art in heaven, we thank you this morning for waking us up, for bringing us to this platform, for allowing us to have this broadcast where we could explore your word, we could explore what you have revealed to us in your word, and to be able to compare it to what is happening in the world today. Father, we ask for your guidance, the aid of your Holy Spirit to lead us into all truth this morning. Let whatever I say and do here today be to your name's honor and glory. We ask in Jesus' most precious name. Amen. All right. Now, let's go into the message for today. So bear with me as, you know, we're doing this solo, as I made mention earlier. So we're looking at Dawn of the New World Order, part 1. And this is going to be pretty long because we're going to tie it in with the mark of the beast and how the mark of the beast is actually going to be playing in all of this. On the screen here, you could clearly see, I don't know if you could see my mouse, but this image is an AI-generated image with the symbol that is associated with the New World Order, which is the Allseeing Eye. And you have a group of individuals who appear to be leaders from around the world sitting at a table, and obviously there's a discussion going on. And then you have recent events such as Elon Musk's revelation or announcement that he is going to be releasing Optimus robots and the Robovan and the Robotaxi, or better known as the Robocab. So AI is is going on a whole different level. And before I continue, if you have ever seen the movie iRobot with Will Smith, you would have recognized that a lot of the features, or rather the robot, Optimus robot, the cars, and even the Robovan is very similar to what was portrayed in that film. I think that film came out in 2004 or 5, thereabout. And you would have been able to see the similarities in everything. The only difference with the Optimus robot is that you don't get to see any face. And there's a reason for that. But we're not going to delve into that today, but this is all playing into the whole global takeover government, if you will. So let us go into the message for today. So, a conspiracy. Now, for many Christians, a New World Order is only a conspiracy theory. You speak to many Christians, modern Christians today, and they will tell you that, you know, this is a conspiracy theory, because where would they even get the idea to dismiss what you're telling them as a conspiracy theory? Obviously, mainstream media. And they would have listened and trusted mainstream media more than they would even trust the Bible that they're supposed to be associated with or to be studying. Most Christians have Bibles. They read, they pick and choose what they want to read. Like a lot of surface readers would probably be reading a lot of Psalms and certain things that would encourage them, help them when they're feeling down and that kind of thing. But when it comes to understanding world events, they're clueless. It may be that they just don't want to know. It could be that perhaps they don't understand and they have been deceived so much by mainstream media that they don't even know what to believe anymore. But a lot of Christians would look at this in it's sort of like as a fantasy. It's not real. You know, this is stuff. This is the kind of stuff that you see in movies. This is not the kind of stuff that the Bible speaks of. And they look at the Bible as being very different, more spiritualistic, and they sort of like compartmentalize it in that kind of realm, and detach it from reality as if it does not really exist in our reality. And so they don't look at our reality as being part of the biblical timeline, or rather part of biblical history, because obviously there is this split. And so that begins to create a problem for them. So, but the Bible warns us differently, that a changed geopolitical world is at the center of apocalyptic prophecy. It forms shortly before the second return of Jesus, when the world will be in awe over a harlot and abyss. Symbols for which the Bible has revealed to us is really church and nation. The harlot represents a church. Harlot obviously represents the false church, because we know in prophecy, Bible prophecy, the pure woman in white represents the pure church of God, whereas a harlot represents the false church, which is represented in biblical prophecy as Rome. And the beast is the nation, or rather its seat of governance, which would be represented there by the nation, as we would indicate that in Revelation chapter 18. And we see the culmination of that take place in Revelation chapter 18. We'll be looking at that in detail perhaps in part 2. But for now, we go back to Testimonies to the Church, volume 9, page 11, verse 2, or paragraph 2. And this statement really sets the tone for what we're about to uncover. Ellen White says, great changes are soon to take place in our world, and the final movements will be rapid ones. Rapid ones. Now, this was written perhaps a little over 100 years ago, more than 100, maybe 150 years ago. And the prediction is that there will be great changes to take place, and the final movement will be rapid ones. I want to pause here for a second to maybe discuss with you a few things. When we look at the changes that have taken place, such as the formation of the United Nations, when we look at all these world organizations such as the WEF, when we look at the Bilderberg Group, when we look at the Council on Foreign Relations, the Club of Rome, and we look at all these organizations, we see that certain decisions and certain movements would have been taken, but that would have been over a long period of time. But in the last 5 years, there have been rapid developments. Rapid developments. Prior to last year, you would have absolutely learned zero concerning advanced artificial intelligence. But from last year, early last year, there have been rapid developments where AI is concerned. Whether it was in the making silently or quietly before, the point is it was released, and everything and every entity and every organization has been using AI since then. And it has happened so fast that everything moving forward is going to be dealt with AI, from the phones that were released with Apple technology last month, incorporating AI. A lot of the Android devices are incorporating AI. Biometrics. Phones have had biometrics for a long time now. You're able to unlock your phones with your facial recognition, and everybody is like, "Oh, that's so cool!" And it is so convenient. I don't have to type anything anymore. When you travel, you go to the airport, you use biometrics as well, and the artificial intelligence that systems that they have, they're able to map your facial features and to be able to recognize who you are, map the color of your eye, the shape of your face. Every single aspect is mapped out and recorded. And so when you travel, it's able to actually recognize that this is who you are. So there have been rapid developments, but this is in technology. This is one aspect of what Ellen White is actually talking about, even though she didn't know exactly what it was, but she knew that the final movements would have been rapid ones. And we're seeing the evidence of this today. Just last week, we saw the announcement from Elon Musk with his robots. Now, the entire world is abuzz with this news, but they're not paying attention to the Eastern world. China has been developing robots, and they are actual robots working in environments in China. And people are not aware of it because mainstream media seem to be only covering the US. And so you're not really paying attention or feeding on news coming out of China. So you think that Elon Musk's news of his Optimus robots is a big thing. It's revolutionary. It's new, but it's not. There are other countries such as India as well that's way more advanced with its biometrics and incorporating biometrics into its system, and we'll see that shortly. So there have been several theories over the years, such as real-life institutions. Now, you're talking about way back in the 1960s. Individuals came out and started sounding the alarm to warn individuals that there is this elite group of individuals who have formulated or established organizations such as the Federal Reserve, the Council on Foreign Relations, the UN, the WEF, and the WEF, World Economic Forum, and the US government that operate as fronts for the international banker shadow establishment at the time. They basically, these individuals knew that there was a plan. They knew something was fishy. They knew something was amiss, but they didn't quite know what it was. And who was behind it. So to them, they looked at the paper trail or the money trail, and they saw that, well, there's someone bankrolling all of this. And it points right back to the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, but most importantly, the Rothschilds. And so they believe that this is the shadow establishment, and everybody would be following the history from Bavaria with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. With the Freemasonry and how they bankrolled certain wars and revolutions, such as the French Revolution, the First and Second World Wars, and all of that. And they were able to really come on top because governments would have been borrowing from them and owing them a lot of money. And in return, they would have been able to coerce, and I'm using this word very generously, coerce the government to be able to implement or enact certain laws to better their or to forward their end goal. And so these individuals back in the 1960s would have been able to only get to the point where they would have been able to connect the dots to see that there's this elite group of people who are bankrolling all of these things. Now, these organizations were set to work towards creating a one world government and to put certain things in place. At the time, these things were immediately dismissed. Because, hey, why would these persons who are involved in this want, in the early stages of their plans, want the world to really turn against them and to really stop them from achieving their goals. So muddy the water and call these individuals lunatics, crazies, that they don't know what they're talking about. But over the years, you would have recognized that there have been many statements made by credible individuals such as past US presidents who say almost exactly what these individuals were warning about. And the question now is, who is going to lead this new world order? There's been a lot of talk about a new world order. Almost every single country is actually now talking about a new world order. So the question is, who is going to lead the new world order? Question is whether it's going to be US. Some people believe that US is the front runner because they're the most powerful. China is second. Russia is even in the mix. But there is one entity that nobody is looking at. Nobody is looking at this entity to see whether they are in the front running position to lead out in this new world order. Who is this entity? We're going to look at that a little later. In fact, I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to show you, and you will be able to put the dots together to identify which entity it is that I'm talking about. And as you would probably think, they will be right at the top above the US. But first, if you remember a couple of years ago, not too long ago, just maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, we had gone through something called COVID, and there would have been the lockdown, restrictions, vaccine passports. There would have been coercion to get people to comply with certain rules and laws that were implemented. And do you remember what I said? Those of you who study with me and those of you who actually have listened to my previous presentations on these subjects, you would have remembered that I made mention of the fact that the mark of the beast is not a microchip. It is not something tangible that is going to be given to you, but it is a decision in your mind that you're going to make to accept the system that is presented to you, which is an anti-God system. It is not a mark that anyone can see, but the decision that you make is going to reveal which mark you have received. And remember that I said that the mark of the beast is not going to be enforced just yet because there needs to be a global infrastructure in place where the entire global network of government will agree on a mandate or a pact or a set of rules that when certain laws are passed and enforced in the United States, it is also agreed to by Russia, by China, by the South America, by Africa, by the Caribbean nations, by Canada, by you name the country, they would have agreed to it. And in agreeing to it, they would now put certain things in place, or they would have had an infrastructure in place that would have been agreed to on a global scale, on a global platform, that they would have signed an agreement in favor of such a pact. And every country would be responsible to be able to implement the infrastructure needed. And one of the things that I made mention of, if you remember, is that back then, I did say that one of the things that this global entity is now doing is redistributing wealth so that the developing nations, such as the Caribbean nations and the small nations in the Pacific, would have been able to get the help that they need in order to put such infrastructure in place. And it would have been the mandate or the responsibility of these first world countries to give wealth over to these nations, these developing states. And one of the ways they have achieved this is through the Climate Change Act, where they have used climate change to force first world countries, advanced countries, and rich nations, richer nations, to be able to give wealth over back to these developing states. Because obviously the argument was the first world countries or the industrialized countries have contributed more to global climate change than the developing states such as the Caribbean nations or the Pacific nations. And so these nations are now paying the hefty price for the industrialized pollution that have destroyed the ozone layer, causing great climate change. And so monies now have to be given to these developing states, SIDS as they call them, small island developing states, to be able to develop their infrastructure, to put certain things in place. And some of that money obviously is going to be used to put themselves on par with the developed states or the first world countries. So obviously there's now a redistribution of wealth. And that redistribution of wealth is justified through the Global Climate Change Act, which also talks about the proposal for there to be a day of rest, which we will discuss a little later. Now, bear with me. We have a lot to discuss, and I'm trying to cram a lot of things into these presentations so that you could understand where we are going and what we are saying. When these infrastructures are in place, such as in St. Lucia, you would understand that there has been the implementation of the biometric passport, and a lot of that funding came from the United States. And the system used came from the United States. So you understand how they're actually helping the developing countries to put those things in place, because it's a requirement. And these other first world countries will force these developing states to implement those things, else their citizens will not be able to travel to these first world countries without having the more advanced documents, or rather the biometric documents. Now, another aspect of this is the digital currency. Digital currency allows the powers that be to have greater control over buying and selling, or rather economic activity. And that economic activity has to be curtailed or controlled. And some of the arguments, obviously, there will always be arguments. And some of the arguments would have been that we need to stop criminals from using monetary systems that are not able to be easily tracked. And so we need to create global peace and reduce crime and the likelihood of persons turning to crime. And so if you have digital currency, which gives you a digital footprint or a digital trail to be able to see where monies are coming from and how they are being spent, you could stop crimes before they happen, or rather cut down the percentage of crimes being committed by criminals. But there's another aspect to it. With digital currency, you're not only going to be able to monitor the activity of criminals, but you're going to be able to monitor every single person's activity, not just criminals, but regular law-abiding citizens. You will know what they buy, how they bought it, where the money came from, because in order for somebody to pay you, they would have to take it from an account and they would have to transfer it. So there's nobody receiving any hard cash. Nobody's going to be receiving hard cash that is not easily traced. So everybody's going to be under the microscope. Not only that, what is going to happen also is that if you're controlling everybody's account through biometrics, through technology, artificial intelligence, you know what you're able to do? If somebody is being a criminal or a terrorist, you're going to be able to, well, right now they do it, and it's limited where they freeze accounts. So certain accounts that you have, whether it's in offshore accounts or whether in the bank or whatever, they're able to freeze it. But that does not mean that is the only place where your monies would be saved. So for criminals, they would probably still have hard cash, and they're still able to make purchases wherever they want to continue their dealings and their work. So they'll tell you this is another reason why we need to go digital. And so if we go complete digital and nobody has hard cash anymore, we're able to put a freeze on all the activities, whether they're buying or they're selling, because in order to be able to do that, you would have to go through the system that controls digital currencies. And so that's how you get to a point where you now have control, which is justified to be able to put somebody's switch off. Remotely, they could put off your account and you have no access to cash. So you can't buy, you can't sell, you cannot engage in any form of economic activity except perhaps barter. But wait, if you think you could escape the system to be able to barter land, barter property, barter materials, or whatever else, this biometric system that is being introduced also takes stock of what you own, where you own it, and everything is part of your digital profile. Now, you think what I'm saying is a conspiracy, right? You're probably thinking, well, this is not a sermon, is it? You're just spewing conspiracies and there's nothing in the Bible to support this. Well, like I said at the beginning, the world or the news tells us what is happening in the world. The news tell us what is happening in the world. But the Bible tells us why. So the Bible doesn't tell you every single thing that is going to develop, the nitty-gritty or the details of the development of those things that are going to lead to the major thing that the Bible speaks of. So for instance, the Bible is talking about an end-time entity that is going to take over the world, that is going to continue its wave of persecution of God's people. And in order to do that, it would have to be in cabal with the kings of the earth and the merchants of the earth. And so we recognize that, okay, I'm putting a little bit more volume for those who say that it is low. So we recognize that the Bible tells us of this entity, but the Bible doesn't tell us the things that this entity will do in order to be able to achieve that goal. That's where we have to pay attention to world events and to be able to compare it to what the Bible is saying and to look at its projection of where it is leading and to pay attention and to sort of record all the events that are actually happening, because when you do and you look back, you're able now to connect the dots that in the real time you're not able to, because you're not able to see where it's going or where it came from. But over time, you're able to look back and to see, okay, this led to this, that is leading to that. Okay? Now, let's continue. That's what I said earlier. The Bible tells, well, there's a saying that tells us the news tell us what is happening in the world. The Bible tells us why it is happening. So I want you to keep remembering this. Now, back in September 23rd, this press release came from the United Nations. Now, you know, every year in September, they meet in the United States, and the world leaders meet to discuss issues and make plans and sign documents and whatnot. This document is very important, and it was signed at the recently held United Nations meeting or conference or forum, whatever you want to call it, in New York. In the speech given by Guterres, this press release was issued from the speech where this UN secretary was able to highlight certain aspects, not in detail, but only what they believe was necessary for the rest of the world to know. But whatever else was not really put, the details of everything else, the plans, obviously they're not going to tell you. But when you look at what the press release covers and you go back to do research, you are able to see what it is actually saying that is not there. Now, this is not speculation, but the information is right in our faces. So let's look at let's look at excerpts of this press release, which is titled, United Nations Adopts Groundbreaking Pact for the Future to Transform what? Global Governance. That's what's on the agenda, global governance. It's just another fancy way to say a new world order or one world government. Let's look at this. So this is the pact. It's called the UN Global Pact for the Future. And the press release, we're going to go through some aspects of it, and it states, as the Secretary General has said, we cannot create a future fit for our grandchildren with the system built by our grandparents. The Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations open the door to new opportunities and untapped possibilities. Press release continues. The entire pact is designed to turbocharge implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. What? The entire pact, what is it? What was it? What is its purpose for? To do what? To turbocharge, meaning to speed up, to give an impetus to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now you know what the 2030 agenda is and what the Sustainable Development Goals are. It includes the redistribution of wealth and the development of all countries, including the developing states. And certain infrastructure would have been put in place to support that goal. And the press release continues and says the Global Digital Compact, annexed to the pact, is the first comprehensive global framework for digital cooperation and AI governance. Obviously, the United Nations will quickly run and present to the world laws to govern digital cooperation and AI governance so that no entity can go rogue to do its own thing where AI is concerned, because people would have had access to certain access of AI, for instance, from OpenAI, and there are other companies out there that are probably not playing ball, but they do have the technology and they have the system in place to be able to do their own stuff. And so if you put things in place or certain laws in place to govern AI, you are actually restricting what individuals can and cannot do. So, from the press release, we continue to read, this is also the first global commitment to data governance, placing it on the UN agenda and requiring countries to take concrete actions by what? 2030. That is the goal that they have set from eons ago. And every single country needs to put things in place by that year. Now, the press release continues to say strong signals on the importance of engagement of other stakeholders in global governance, including local and regional governments, civil society, private sector, and others. They're including every single entity, everybody, to be able to come in and to be able to put those things in place. So, if you thought this was, a total lie or merely a conspiracy, and you don't believe what this is actually stating, well, there is another document from the United Nations that speaks to, well, not another document, there's another news I was able to uncover from a website called Biometric Update. And this is where you could probably go to find a lot of information on the happenings from various countries where biometric development is concerned. And you will see what each nation is actually doing. And this is a credible website that has accurate information that tells you, based on whatever is happening from official sources from government, it will put it there for you to be able to see the development of biometrics in each country. Now, this particular site, biometricupdate.com, took the press release from the United Nations and broke it down for you to be able to understand in more simpler terms, because this press release is going to be sort of Greek to persons who have not really been following these developments. And so the title of this news article from Biometric Update is Digital Public Infrastructure, a Pillar of UN's Ambitious Global Digital Pact. The UN press statement or the United Nations, they're not telling you, or they did not tell you specifically, that this pact is really referred to as the Digital Public Infrastructure Pact, because that's what it is. It's dealing with biometrics. Now, the Digital Public Infrastructure, or short acronym DPI, the article says, has made it into the United Nations Ambitious Pact for the Future, designed to boost cooperation and multilateralism among member nations. So, what is the Digital Public Infrastructure? Well, the DPI is a network of digital systems that connects people, data, and money to enable governments to provide services and economic opportunities. DPIs can include digital IDs, payments, and data exchange. Already you have cell phones that allow you to have data exchange through, just putting, I think it's called NFTs or something. I can't remember off my head, but you just put your phones, you touch them together, and you can transfer information to each other. So your telephone number, your business card information, all of that is on your phone digitally, and you can transfer that to somebody that you would like to give a digital copy of your business card. So that's a way of data exchange. A data exchange could be where you go to the airport to travel and you give a copy of your digital passport. So it's scanned from your face and it is in the system and it recognizes you. That's a form of digital data exchange. Then you also have digital IDs such as, passports, driver's license, national ID cards. All of these would be part of your digital IDs. And then you have, of course, payments, digital payments, which I spoke of the digital currency at the beginning. And so you now have countries implementing digital currency where persons are moving away from hard cash, and you're able to now have all your banking information on your digital device or attached to your biometric facial recognition. And you go to a store and it scans you and it pays for whatever item. You don't need to do any manual transactions to pay for an item at the cashier. And most likely there may not even be a cashier. If you look at some of the Amazon stores in the US, you go in and there's not anybody, cashier in the store. As you go in, it scans your wallet, your digital wallet, and the system is in there, and whatever item that you choose on the shelf, as you pass back, it's scanned automatically and it's paid for. So seamless transaction, and everybody's like, oh, such convenience in a fast-paced moving world. And everybody's like, yes, technology, it's wonderful, it's great. But where is it going to? That's what you should be more concerned about, not the enjoyment of how convenient it is, but where is it leading to? So then we have Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I went on their website because I remember they were talking about implementing digital public infrastructure. So I went on their website to look at the development and what they're actually doing. And if you still think this is a conspiracy, this is very easily verified by doing your own research and going to the websites to look at exactly what I'm talking about. So on their website, at a glance, we see on their website where it states, at a glance, digital public infrastructure, or DPI, is a set of digital systems that enable countries to safely and efficiently provide economic opportunities and deliver social services. DPI spans, the website continues, the entire economy, connecting people, data, and money in much the same way that roads and railways connect people and goods. So, lower down here, we see that countries that build safe and inclusive DPI can, and this is how they sell it to you, create a vibrant and competitive economy, foster trust between governments and citizens, deliver essential services, and create economic opportunity across many sectors, including finance, health, and agriculture. Now, which country will not want to have such a system, particularly ministers of government who would want to revolutionize their systems in the country? And it may be a plus for a lot of people to be able to do that. And it may have its perks, and it does meet certain goals to make life less difficult for citizens. But you have to understand where this thing is coming from. Who is pushing it? Is there an agenda? And what is this agenda? On the surface, you don't see this agenda. This is what they sell to you. But in this presentation we're looking at, we will spend some time to basically dig into where this thing came from, how far back this was planned, and what we are seeing now is what Ellen White said, which is the rapid development of these plans. So we continue and we see the foundation of the DPI would have included digital identity systems, which we spoke of a while ago, which would have been your digital IDs, digital payment systems, data exchange systems, which again is from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So this is not a conspiracy, but this is fact. And then obviously we talk about something else. Now I want to spend some time. I put this full on the screen. As you can see, it is on this screen to the bottom, but I wanted to just take it and blow it up so that you can better able read what is actually there. I know some of you have small devices, and so the print is not that big, so I hope you could actually see it clearly now. On their website, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we see that they are stating something that is very troubling to me. It may not be troubling to you, but it is to me because my research reveals what this is going to lead to. On the website we read, we also aim to explore several emerging DPI components, including consent, which involves a privacy-based mechanism for users to authorize the exchange of their digital information. Credentials, which enable the sharing of government-issued and privately issued credentials such as certificates, your birth certificate, invoices, driver's licenses, and passports. Registries to establish, and pay attention to this, registries to establish verifiable records of what people own, claim, or are entitled to, such as your property, your land. And then we have digital signatures, which are created, verified, and managed to ensure the legal validity of electronic documents and transactions so that nobody is able to create a fake ID or anything like that, because there will be a digital footprint that you cannot, create a counterfeit for. And so they're protecting the system so that nobody is able to hack it or circumvent it. But I want to spend a little time on these two ones that I've highlighted there for you. And that would have been the credentials that enable the sharing of government issued. And before I get to that one, the first one, let's talk about consent. Now, let's pause here for a second. Let's talk about consent. You notice that they're asking for your consent because this includes your privacy-based information. And not everybody is going to be willing to give up their privacy or information about themselves unless it is justified. And a lot of the justifications we're seeing so far include climate change, crime, economic security for all, redistribution of wealth, a safer world, a better environment to live in. Now, I want to pause for a second to go back to the 80s and the 90s, where you would have been growing up like me, and you would have been able to watch a lot of those films coming out that really give an insight into what the future looks like. Even cartoons such as the Jetsons, you would have been able to see flying cars, robots, planes, and self-driving vehicles, and all of that kind of stuff. In all of those films and cartoons that you would have seen growing up, there is one common theme, which is a utopian world. And this utopian world is always presented to you as being cleaner, safer, happier. You get more peace, and everything is just beautiful, perfect, flawless. When you finish watching the film and you go back out into the environment, into your society, you look around you and you see the place is filthy. It is nasty. It is dirty. It is not habitable. To you, you now develop this desire to live, whether it be vicariously in this film that you just watched. And now you fantasize about, how you want to see a clean building, a clean city, clean everything. And you now long for that. You yearn for it. You know what you're going through? That's what is referred to as conditioning, mind control. They have conditioned you to look forward to the time when these things will come into reality, and which they would have planted in you the desire for this, because you look around you and it's so bad and everything. And obviously these individuals would have been probably facilitating crime and everything to keep things chaotic, so that it's going to get so chaotic that any chance that you are going to have for a more peaceful world, for a better society, you are going to grasp on it, even if it means giving up your privacy, even if it means consenting to giving up certain freedoms that you have enjoyed all your life. And so it's not going to be a problem for you, because in your mind, it is going to give you something great, something good, because the movies that you watched, the cartoons that you saw, the possibility is there to enjoy such a real world that was shown to you. So giving up your privacy and your freedom is not going to be a problem, because in exchange, you get to have a better world. And that's what most people, and that's why most people are not going to have a problem with it, because look at how many people have already said, I'm going to buy one of the Tesla robots, the Optimus robots. A lot of people said, $30,000, I'm going to buy one. A robovan, I'm going to buy one. The robotaxi, I'm going to get one. So a lot of them are already buying into it, because to them, it is a sign that the future is now, and that future that they saw in movies, it's now becoming a reality, and I want to be part of that reality. You're not going to get hesitation. You're not going to get resistance, except from those who are actually paying attention to what is actually happening. And then obviously you have the registries that establishes records about what you own and what you claim or what you're entitled to, so that if in fact you're not part of the system, you're not going to be able to transfer what you own to somebody else, because they're not going to allow it. And they will see you as a terrorist, as somebody who's against the system, and they will track you down. They will shut you down, and they will close your account. You're not going to be able to buy and sell. You're not going to be able to transact anything. You're not going to be able to transfer your property or any property that you own to somebody else, because all of that would have been part of the digital system, the DPI. So they control it. They control all of it, and they can shut you down at any point. So if you think this is still a conspiracy, let's turn over to India, which is now a global leader in developing DPIs. And some examples of India's DPIs, which are actually a reality right now and being used in their society, is now you have to forgive me, I really don't understand the Indian language. So if I chop this up, please forgive me, any Indian watching. So you have the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, a digital health ecosystem that provides a unique health ID for individuals. So now you have a unique health ID that has all your medical records on there. So any doctor you go to will have access to it, and all your data and everything is there with you. You're carried with it. So in case you happen to collapse in a city or somewhere, you're scanned digitally, and they would have all your information to know whether you actually have any pre-existing conditions that they can easily treat you and save your life. Then you have CoWIN, a platform originally developed for COVID-19 vaccination that has now been repurposed for universal immunization programs. A lot of the things that came out during COVID, they were the foundation to create a system for each country moving forward. And then you have Isanjivani, a platform that conducts telemedicine consultations. Again, using AI to be able to, you don't even have to go to see a doctor physically, but you could do it in the comfort of your own home. And then you have DG Yatra, a biometric-enabled travel experience that uses facial recognition. So you go to the airport, you don't need to scan your passport or anything. And even in China has that already. You don't need to go there to scan your passport or anything. And the moment you enter, your face is already scanned. It is just opposed to, or it is reference to any flights that you have been booked for, and you're able to be checked in. It's very simple, very easy, more convenient. A lot of people will really love this because since 9/11, travel has become a real nightmare for persons, including myself, and I hate it. So a lot of people will welcome this to see how much of a breeze it is, that you don't have to take out shoes, and you don't have to take out belts, and you don't have to go through all of the scrutiny that you would normally do, because everything would have been on the system. They would have had your entire life on the system, and when you're scanned, they know everything about you, and pretty much. And then you have UPI, Unified Payment Interface. So you notice that it's dealing with every aspect of your life, from health to what you own, to your digital IDs, your government IDs, your private IDs, such as your work IDs and all of that. And then it deals with buying and selling. So these are the hallmarks of the DPI. It covers every major aspect of your life. Now let's look at some fake checkers and what they are saying. And I call them fake checkers because they're not fact checkers. I know maybe YouTube might want to take down my video at some point, but I hope and pray that they don't, and a lot of people get to see it before. But there are some fact checkers that came out after September 23rd, after the UN meeting, to debunk some persons who are saying that the UN presented a pact, a global pact for the future to all countries, and that included biometrics. And the fact checkers are saying, no, it does not include biometrics. But what we have just gone through, is it not biometric? Isn't biometric dealing with putting your digital IDs on a system that is attached to you? Isn't scanning your face for travel biometric? Isn't the ability to be able to buy and sell through your facial recognition, or having a digital currency in your wallet, in your digital wallet, whether it's on your phone or not, isn't that biometric? All of what we have really gone through, where you're able to have your health information on a digital platform that is attached to you as an individual and is easily retrievable by authorities or persons whom you give consent to have that data exchange. Isn't that biometric? So when the UN talks about putting laws in place for AI and having this global pact to incorporate technologies such as what we spoke of, isn't that biometric? And so these fact checkers are coming, because you see, the thing is, a lot of people, including credible persons, such as there's this particular doctor who immediately came out and sounded the alarm back in September, last week in September, and this individual stated exactly what I'm telling you, that this is leading to complete control, and they're able to switch you off if there's another event such as COVID in the future and you are refusing to accept the vaccine. They can switch you off and cut you off from society, and you have no access to money, you have no access to travel, you have nothing whatsoever, and you're you're going to be suffering. And so they're coercing you through mandates to be able to accept whatever it is they're giving to you, and you have no choice in the matter because you already gave them consent. But this is biometrics. So, bear with me for a second as I share with you a video. So let me just put this video on the screen. I forgive me, I was not able to actually put this video on the screen before. But bear with me, I know we're running out of time here, but let me see where I have this video so that I could share it with you, because this video is very important. It is actually going to lay the foundation and to prove that these fake checkers are actually fake checkers, or these fact checkers are actually fake checkers, and what they're telling you is false. So just bear with me as I put this on the screen for you. And we're going to put this video in here, and going to make sure that right. So let's go back to the presentation. So on the screen, you see I have screenshotted a website from the UNDP, which is a derivative or part of the United Nations. And it is a website that outlines the goals, the UNDP goals, or the 2030 goals. And this is what is stated on their website. So if you think the UN is not implementing digital public infrastructure, and the pact that they signed has nothing to do with the digital public infrastructure, as the fact checkers or the fake checkers are telling you, then I'd like you to see a video that I got from their website, which was updated recently. And so I want to share this video with you so that you could see what it is actually saying.
You've definitely heard of digital public infrastructure, or DPI, but can you explain what it really is? Let's take a look at it through the eyes of billions of people at the risk of being left behind. Meet Amari. Amari needs to prove she owns her land, pay for government fees, and receive payments for various services. She needs to provide the Ministry of Lands a copy of her ID card, an authorization from her bank, and half a dozen other documents. Just imagine how much time she would save if she could access these documents with just a few clicks. The ministry could then also quickly make sure her documents are authentic. For this to happen, identity, credentials, and payment services must be digitized and connected with each other, both across ministries and private data providers like banks. This is exactly what DPI is all about. By digitizing more public and private services on common infrastructure, we will create more value for each of us. To actually make Amari's life easier, some rules must be respected. Think of a railway system with stations, tracks, and trains. Whatever the length of the train, the wheel spacing must be identical. Whatever route it takes, the signaling must be consistent. And whatever the train's schedule, time must be measured uniformly across stations. This guarantees the smooth functioning of the infrastructure and ensures scale-up from network effects by breaking down silos. The result? Travelers get to their destinations safely and comfortably. With built-in open standards that are reusable, not only does it become easier for Amari to access information and payments, but this infrastructure can connect everyone, everywhere, to other opportunities and services. With privacy embedded up front in the design, people can rest assured that their data will be kept safe and secure. The world over, countries are starting to build their own digital railways. The good news is they can pick among the best existing practices and adapt them to the tastes and travel habits of their people. The tracks we lay today will shape the infrastructure we will share tomorrow. So let's join forces and shape this new infrastructure towards ensuring that DPI is safe, accessible, green, financed, and future-ready.
So this is from the UNDP, and as I said, the fake checkers quickly try to come to make it seem as if people like myself or the doctor whose video went viral on this is actually telling a lie and not true, not any truth. So, and the stuff is right there, and it's easy to actually go on the website to actually see this. Now, so what is being said? What is being used to scan your face? It's biometrics. What allows your data to be connected to your online profile? Biometrics. What allows you to have your driver's license digitized and have your passport digitally on your system, bank information, your health and everything to be electronically attached to you on a global network, that you would then become a global citizen? Biometrics. All of that, every single bit of it is biometrics. And so these fact checkers are quickly coming because the information is now being attached, and everybody's attaching this now, and people are connecting the dots, and they are warning persons. And so they don't want a resistance, so now they have to go and still lie to you, and everybody's being duped. Oh, so, you know, these news media, which are owned by these individuals, the media, mainstream media, they're coming out with a fact checking and everything and telling you, oh, that was not said, or this was not said. But the truth is, the infrastructure that they're talking about is exactly what I've presented to you and is what's on their website. So how is it that the DPI is part of the 2030 goals, and yet you're saying it is not part of what the UN Secretary had presented as being part of the global, technology and AI governance pack? I mean, come on. Don't take us for fools. We know the truth. We know what's happening because we study our Bibles and we know what it is leading to. Now, how does this all fit into end-time prophecy? And you're probably saying that I have been presenting on this for a while now, and it's Sabbath, and you probably want something strong or a sermon that is going to really make you think, and you need some evidence, some scriptures and whatnot. So I have not presented scriptures. So you're probably wondering this, but the truth of the matter is, that's why I stated before, the news tell us what is happening in the world, but the Bible tells us why. So first off, we have to talk about what is happening in the world, which is what we did. I gave you information, credible information. I gave you sources and told you what is happening in the world. Now we're trying to ascertain why and what the Bible says, and the Bible will reveal to us why this is happening. So this is where we are now. We are now going into the why. We know the what. We know about the DPIs, we know about the biometrics, we know about the global governance, and we know about the New World Order. Now we are trying to find out the why. So, in order to understand the why, we need to understand what is the mark of the beast. In short, the mark of the beast is a mark or a sign, not really a physical sign or a physical mark, but it is a mark or a sign that allows people to be able to buy and sell. Now, the buy and sell means that you are able to benefit from the system that is created. And so if you are part of the beast system, then you receive the mark of that beast, which is the nation. So the mark of that nation, the mark of that entity, that world governance, that is going to say, you are part of my system, and therefore you will benefit from my system. And only those who are part of the system will benefit from that system, because the Bible tells us in Revelation chapter 13 verse 16 to 17, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Verse 16 tells us, and he causeth. The causeth means you don't have a choice in the matter. It means that he, the beast, would have made mandates, coerced you, forced you against your will, given you no choice in the matter to be able to make a decision, and that it would cause you now to accept that mark, which is a part of an entire system. So people are thinking, well, this is, traditional Adventists tell you this is Sunday, so they force Sunday upon people. No, it's not just Sunday. Sunday is the ultimate goal, yes, but it is a holistic system. Everything is interconnected. They control the whole system. So that what Revelation is talking about that it would have had to control the entire system to cause you now to have limited to no choice than to accept the system. So the Bible tells us it is both small, great, rich, poor, free, bond. It doesn't matter who you are. Every single person would have to make that choice to receive that mark in the right hand or in the forehead. The right hand is not literal. It talks about the actions that you do as a result of the decision you made in your forehead, because this is the central point where your faculties are that would think and that would allow you to reason within yourself. That's where it takes place. This is the central part of the brain, or the part of the brain, the frontal cortex of the brain, where your decision making takes place. And so that is what the Bible is referring to when it says that you would have to receive it in your hand or in your forehead. So it's what you do and the choices that you make in your mind. So they force you, like in COVID, they gave you mandates. And if you don't accept these mandates, you're not going to be able to stay in your job, or you're not going to be able to travel, you're not going to be able to eat, you're not going to be able to do anything that other people would freely enjoy if they accepted. And so you would now have to make a decision, and that decision would be in your mind to say, you know what, it's just a vaccine, I'll take it. Because I need to eat, I need to shop, I need to go out, I need to travel. Life has to continue. So I'll take it. That's not the mark of the beast. So I'm safe, I'm fine. But what has happened is that it's a dry run for the real thing. What they have done is that they have allowed you to experience what this mandate is going to look like when they are going to really implement the mark of the beast. But in order to do that, it's going to take an entire system, and that's what it's talking about. So unless you have that mark or that sign, which indicates that you are part of the system, you're not going to be able to buy and sell. In other words, the buy and sell in verse 17 refers to your living, your economic life, your ability to survive by the basic requirements in this world. So they will cut you off from those things. How? The question is, now you're getting what I'm saying. The Bible tells you what is going to happen as well. The Bible tells you part of what is going to happen, and it tells you why. So the Bible tells you that this is going to happen, but the Bible didn't tell you how it's going to happen. It is up to you to pay attention to what's happening in the world for you to be able to see what it is leading to and why this is taking place. Now the Bible has told you that you're not going to be able to buy and sell. You're not going to be able to do those things. So guess what? Except you have the mark of the beast. Now, what we have gone through gives you an understanding of how they're implementing for them to be able to prevent you from buying and selling. So when you have all your digital footprint on their system and you have given consent for them to be able to control it, when the time comes for them now to really implement Sunday enforcement, if you don't accept the system, they can switch you off and you're not going to be able to buy and sell. There will be no hard cash, so you can't do anything on the black market. Your property, you're not going to be able to trade it. Your goods, you're not going to be able to trade it, because all of those things would have been part of a registry that is online that tells them what you have, and it has an ID or anything on it. So if you ever try to transfer land or house or car or anything to somebody else, it is going to be traced and you will be arrested or you will be killed, or whatever they decide to do, they're going to do it to you and you can't escape the system. It is going to be tight locked. and counterfeit proof. The only escape, the Bible tells us, is to flee to the hills. Flee to the hills. Because God knows that is the only thing that is going to save his people, or prevent his people from dying before their time, if you want to put it that way. Because we know that there is going to be a slaughtering coming, or a great persecution coming. But, so, now you're beginning to piece this together. Is the DPI biometric the mark of the beast? The answer is no. Categorically, it is not the mark of the beast. However, it is the means through which the mark of the beast will be enforced. It is the system, the infrastructure that is now going to be in place to ensure or to enforce the mark of the beast. If you don't accept the mark of the beast, which is the system and the Sunday worship, then your DPIs will be switched off. You will be cut off from the system. You're not going to be able to buy and sell. You cannot travel. You will not be able to own anything. You will not be able to be identified by the system. In fact, you are going to be non-existent. Because if your digital data is switched off, you're nobody. And if you're nobody, it means you could easily be discarded. So, what is the infrastructure that we're talking about? We've already looked at most of it, which is the AI and the advanced technology aspect of it, but there's other aspects to it, like governance and economic system, and also the food system as well, which falls under the economic system for the most part. All of those things, they work hand in hand. It's a holistic thing that they're putting together. But in order for the Sunday law to be enforced, global governance, global economy, global religion must be put in place. There must be an infrastructure system in place that will enable them to be able to control 8 billion people. Yes. I mean, you're talking about 8 billion people. So you need to be able to put a system in place to be able to control the entire world so that you can control what happens. And if there is a resistance, you can control it as well. So the UN is the vehicle by which that infrastructure is being implemented. Now, is this still a conspiracy for you, or are you beginning to see the bigger picture? So, at the beginning of this presentation, I made mention of individuals back from the 1960s who began sounding the alarm to warn persons of this New World Order and that it will amount to nothing good. Back in 1966 was the first recorded date given in a timeline by the New York Magazine on their website. 1991, you would have remembered the famous speech from the former President George H.W. Bush. And now we see all the shaping of what was predicted is now coming to pass. Yet, Bible-believing Christians continue to deny and defend the development of the system because they have a liking for technology, or they want that utopian world that they envisioned in the Jetsons and in the movies back in the 1980s and 1990s and 2000s, because they love it. They see nothing wrong with it. In fact, they focus on all the things that they could gain out of it that they're not seeing, that it is going to lead to something that the Bible has warned us to prepare for. When you get yourself engrossed and captivated in this mesmerizing, quick and rapid development of AI and technology, if you don't pay attention to what the Bible actually is saying and how this thing is developing, and you don't do your research and you don't stay focused on God and on Christ, you are going to be deceived. And by the time you check what is really happening, by the time you pay attention to what has really transpired, it is going to be too late. So, question I asked at the beginning is, who will lead this new world order? Is it the US? Is it China? Is it Russia? And there is this other individual entity, or this other nation that no one is really looking. It's like they're the underdogs. Everybody sees the US as a huge nation and Russia and China as the three biggest, most powerful nations in the world right now. And so everybody's saying, well, it must be one of them. And the race is on to see who will actually lead this new world order. And I'll tell you something, they're playing the game very, very well. They're playing the game very, very well. Because there is one entity nobody's looking at, and they have been pulling the strings behind the scenes and controlling all these other nations and all the various organizations to fulfill their plans, because they are the ones who are going to run it. They're not the ones they're not going to pull strings to let somebody else or let another country come and run it. They're pulling it because their agenda is to run it themselves. The ones who created the New World Order plan will rule the New World Order. And I think I have a typing error there, which is now. But yes, they will rule it now as well, you know. So, the Roman Catholic Church, yes. And you may say, but Roman Catholic Church, but how? They're not even a global power. But that's what makes it so deceiving and blinds the minds of persons, because nobody is paying attention to them. Everybody is focused on the US, Russia, China, and these countries. But nobody's looking at the Roman Catholic Church or to even investigate them. But I have, and others are. And I'm sharing that with you today. So, the Roman Catholic Church began to aggressively define their global social agenda in the 1800s when their land was confiscated by the new Italian government. From then on, they came up with a geopolitical plan to control or to have the power to really take over the world. Because for 1260 years, they ruled the world. And who wants to ever give up power to somebody else when you have tasted it for so long? They're the only country, they're the only power throughout Earth's history that have ruled for such a long time. No one else, no other country has ruled for such a long time. And they're not about to just give that up. They got wounded, they were broken down during the French Revolution, but they didn't die. And they are rising up to power. Obviously, when they fell, another power had to fill the void, which is the United States. But they have been working in the shadow to be able to take control from the United States. And the only way to do that is to replace the free thinkers and the free agents with their own people. When you look at Congress now, about 99% are Catholics and Jesuits as well. And so they're planning to take over the U.S. In fact, they may have already taken over the U.S. and are just waiting for the final movements, which will be rapid ones, to be in effect in order for them to now demand from the U.S. to give the reins of power over to them. So we want to analyze several of their documents to see how far back these plans go. It will become apparent that their geo-religious interest meshes with the geo-secular trends that we see today for global governance, obviously. So let's look. First, we're going to start with Pope Leo XIII, who ruled from 1878 to 1903. Now, Pope Leo XIII laid the foundation for all subsequent Catholic social teaching. That foundation built the society that we have today, whether you're going to work 6 days a week or whether you are voting for a government or a political party. That came from the Vatican. That came from individuals who laid out these plans that we are following today. And we think we're the ones who came up with it and we're just following it because, we came up with it. No, we didn't come up with nothing. We came up with nothing. We were given this and we are following it to a T. Now, his passion was to see a new global economic order. Now, all of that was to develop a plan to be able to give Rome back its power. That is the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to create a plan to give Rome back its power. Now, Pope Leo XIII presented an array of social directives veiled in a cloak of concern for the poor and workers' rights. Now, that's manipulation 101. You present your plans as part of, to help persons, but deep down, you know what your true intentions are. It was a facade, appealing to man's innate covetousness, setting the church as the hero, but requiring Rome's geopolitical control. And that's how they've been doing it, playing the advocate for the poor, the less fortunate, and sort of like playing Robin Hood, taking from the rich and giving to the poor. That's what it is. So Leo denigrated capitalism. His philosophy was not unlike the concepts of Karl Marx. And this was written by Inside the Vatican writer, America and Catholic Social Teaching, Dr. Rupert J. Edera, on October 2012. And you find this on page 42. But I want to share with you Leo's encyclical. Rerum Novarum declared. Now, I've gone through this before with you, so I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of it. If you want to see more information and detailed information on Rerum Novarum, you could look at some of the previous videos on that. But one of the first points would be the poor everywhere were being dealt with unjustly by employers. They should be able to live in a comfortable house, be clothed, be financially secure, and have no hardship. This is all from Rerum Novarum. The poor should stand up for their rights and use labor unions to protect their interests, having a job, decent pay, and a proper work environment. Now, the entire society is going to love to eat those kind of words, because here you have somebody advocating for the poor, because in their mind, the world sees the rich as being greedy people. But if there's an entity, there's an authority that is speaking for the less fortunate, the poor, the ones who are taken advantage of, you give that person respect, you give that person your support, and you defend them, because in your heart of hearts, you believe what they're doing is right. It's just. It's justice. And so that is how they started with their plan to take over the world. Point number 4, the government should be the poor's ally by protecting their rights. And every single political party that has campaigned to advocate for the poor, the less fortunate. That has always been their campaign. If you look at the U.S. presidential elections right now, that's the campaign. To get insurance to those who are not working, to take care of the education debt or school debt, university debt for those persons who are poor, so that they don't have to repay it. You get all these promises. It is always for the poor, always for the poor. That's no different from what Rome did. Then you have point number 5, labor disputes should be settled by the government and or the Catholic Church, putting themselves in there to be an arbiter. Then you have the point number 6, the wealth of employers should be shared with the poor, including property. The redistribution of wealth should be given to the poor, which is what we're seeing right now with the UN agenda. Then you have point number 7, wages should be enough to comfortably support the worker, his wife, and his children, which is goals of the WEF right now. And point number 8, a worker should not labor more than 6 days per week. So you see where we got this idea of working 6 days a week? And 1 day should be for rest and religion. So you force people to work 6 days a week, including the Sabbath, and the only day you're going to stipulate them to rest is 1 day, which is Sunday. And persons will have no choice but to observe Sunday, because they are asked to work 6 days in the week. And you give them a hefty salary as an incentive to say, well, they're not being overworked. And yes, they may have some countries trying to move away from the 6 working day and try to do the 4 working day or 3 working day or whatever they decide. But the point is, this is not really going to change. It's not going to change. Globally, that is. And the winner would always be the working poor. The loser would always be the rich, because, you're trying to, you created wealth for the rich to only make them look bad in the eyes of people so that you could have the vast majority of Earth's citizens supporting you. That's what you want. The rich, they're dispensable or expendable, like Sean Puffy Combs. He's expendable right now. They could do whatever they want with him. He's met his purpose. It's the poor, the ones that have been taken advantage. Then you have a system supporting them. You have a system fighting for them. You have a system, being put in place and laws and everything to protect the poor from the rich. So the rich will always look as the villain, and the poor will always be the victim and the ones who the system is fighting for. The implicit message was always solidarity among the working class, with the state guaranteeing the moral rights of the worker. So what are those moral rights? Economic security for the majority of the expense, at the expense of you, the social. And by the way, this is socialism. It was a covert reach by the Roman Catholic Church to manipulate the state in order to implement those goals. Its ultimate end really is the secularization of the church by creating and helping to assure a right. And so the Roman Church put itself, by using Rerum Novarum, put itself in a place where it now can arbitrate or be a voice globally on human rights issues. The emergence of these social concepts became idealized as what we know to be the common good for the world. And you heard people like John D. Rockefeller made mention of that, and he was following that plan. The oil tycoon who started the oil industry and pharmaceutical industry, those two main industries he started. And then you also have the Rothschilds following the very same plan. And you have world leaders following the very same plan as well. Its philosophy was matured into encyclicals and finally seen as a tool for world dominance. The possibility of such a world order suddenly sprang into the open, and people began talking about the possibility of a world order, because what Rome did was that it laid the foundation of, and it gave them this fantasy of this world that can become a reality for all the good of humanity. And people bought into it. They're still buying into it. And then we have Pope Pius XI, who ruled from 1922 to 1939. He was the leader that guided the Catholic Church back into a world-recognized church state. The harlot and the beast becoming one again. And this happened in 1929. You could go and do some more research on his work in getting that done. And you'd probably read about Mussolini and all these people. So that's a bit of a research there for you too. We're not going to go into the details of it. And then you have Pope Pius, whom we just spoke about, ruling from 1922 to 1939. So his genius didn't stop there. To commemorate the 40th anniversary of Rerum Novarum of Leo XIII, he published Quadragesimo Anno. Now, Quadragesimo Anno is another encyclical in 1931, which builds on Rerum Novarum, which had already laid the foundation for or creating the pathway to dominating the world. So each encyclical lays the foundation, or rather builds on the foundation, to show how and the goals that they want to achieve and when they want to achieve those goals. Everyone must have active concern for the common good of individuals and nations. And so it built on this idea. It sold this idea, this big idea that John H.W. Bush spoke of in his 1991 speech to Congress. This big idea, a new world order, he said, if you remember. So George Q. Flynn, in American Catholics and the Roosevelt presidency, 1932 to 1936, Lexington, Massachusetts, in 1968, page 17. He said that the Quadragesimo Anno was as radical as I am. It is one of the greatest documents of modern times. A geopolitical agenda for the Holy See, the Harlot and the Beast, was formulated. It spoke out against unrestrained competition and capitalism and criticized any government that spoke with disfavor of labor unions. And then we have Alice Bailey. Now, you know about Alice Bailey because I did a whole presentation on Alice Bailey talking about the externalization of the hierarchy. And in this book, she highlighted certain scary stuff. She was a well-known Satanist or spiritualist who channeled messages from a Tibetan spirit guide. And that spirit guide, which we know is demonic angels, informed her that the year 1934 would mark the beginning of what is referred to as organizing men and women into a new order. The world of the brotherhood, a new world order, she says in her book. She credited that spirit guide to give her the information to tell persons that this is going to be the beginning of planning for the New World Order. And what happened in that time after 1934, around that time? The United Nations was formed. And that has been the vehicle by which the New World Order is being achieved. Then you had the Lucis Trust, formerly known as Lucifer Publishing Company, which printed and published Bailey's book. Intriguingly, the Lucis Trust was and remains an NGO member of the United Nations. If you didn't know that, go research it. Check it out yourself. It was during this time that Pope Pius XI began to publish social documents in favor of a centralized world order. One of his Jesuit psychoanalyst priests wrote a sinister book revealing the deceptive and evil approaches the Vatican would take to be the administrative head of that new order. And that book, Boyd Barrett wrote that book. And that book is called Rome Stoops, Conquer, written in 1935. If you want a copy of this book, reach out to me, and you should have a read of it. If you want to piece together what has been happening, you should have a read of this book. By 1940, the Carnegie Endowment of International Peace published the New World Order. Now, notice these years that I'm giving to you. No conspiracy was happening at that time. The New World Order idea, or the idea of the New World Order, had not yet been dismissed as conspiracy, but it is being spoken of by Alice Bailey and by the Roman Catholic Church in their encyclicals. It was a plan that would bring global stability after World War II. This was soon adopted by the State Department, USA, which matured a geopolitical strategy for permanent peace. They suggested a coalition of 10 world regions. Now, I want to pause here for a second. Of all the numbers you could come up with, you are going to suggest 10 world regions, not 11, not 12, not 7, not 6, not 5, but 10 world regions. Why 10? Is that by coincidence? Well, a Pennsylvania cartographer, Maurice Gomberg, developed a map for those agencies that projected a post-war New World map. It was published on February 25th, 1942. And this is a copy of the map. These are those 10 divisions or regions spoken of in the encyclicals by the Roman Catholic and by the United Nations. And this is the post-war New World map. 10 regions. So you have the Americas, North Americas, South America, Africa, Europe, the UK, the Middle East, Australia, Asia, the Pacific. 10 regions, 10 divisions, 10 kings. 10 kings, yes, 10 kings. Something very mysterious must be noted about this map. Historically, the nation of Israel wouldn't arise for another 7 years at that time, yet it is printed as a country. At that time, Israel did not and would not rise for another 7 years as a country. So they knew beforehand that Israel would, and they would plan to use Israel as part of their plans. The move toward a North American Union wouldn't emerge until 1994, which is NAFTA, which, if you remember, during President Trump's presidency, he had discarded that, but Biden brought it back. And yet it appeared there, and it didn't happen, not for some several years later. Now, how did that come together? You see, these individuals know exactly what they're planning and how they want to achieve it. And so those plans are actually written and printed out, and then they are actually going forward to putting that together. That is unclear for some, but it is anticipated the fulfillment of prophecy. And those things are coming together nicely, and you need to pay attention to those things. Now, though historical documents state that it was self-published, the prior planning activity of the Carnegie Institute and the State Department revealed that this map was commissioned. It was commissioned. By whom? President Franklin Delano Roosevelt had addressed the 77th Congress on January 6, 1941. He called for what? A new moral order. That's before 1966, when the New World Order began to be dismissed as a conspiracy theory. But calls were made prior to that date for a new world order. Key principles from that speech were printed on this map, the map that was self-published. Again, intriguing to prophecy are those 10 world divisions. But how do they know, and how did they know that there would have been 10 divisions? You see, if you go back to prophecy, in pagan Rome, there would have been 10 kings, 10 divisions, 10 countries. 3 would have gone out from them, broken away, and those 3 would be annihilated later down the line when pagan Rome became papal Rome. But those 10 kingdoms made up the empire of Rome. They just so loved the word or the number 10 so much that they had to keep the very same 10 divisions of the world. So the plan that was established, or what they had achieved during pagan Rome, that was only extending to the immediate vicinity to have the 10 kingdoms around them. They have now taken that entire plan and expanded it to 10 divisions of the world. So telling you that they're putting and using those 10 divisions, working with those 10 divisions to bring their plans together to give them back power. It's not hard to see if you understand Bible prophecy. So how could President Roosevelt, the Carnegie Institute, the State Department, and Morris Gomberg coalesce their ideas? How? Historian Thomas Moriarty, Irish historian, while researching for a book on the U.S. wartime global ambition, studied Gomberg's map. He was stunned, and so you will be stunned by what you will read. So he said, either the U.S. State Department had someone who could see into the future, or they meticulously planned to redraw the entire map of the world by some mysterious geopolitical sensitivity. In other words, what he's saying is either these individuals, these 3 entities, were able to travel to the future to see what would have happened and to realize it in their time, or they are following a plan that has been laid out for them. So Roman Catholic Vatican confidant, the late Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands established the Bilderbergs organization. You would have heard about the Bilderbergs group, a sinister group, by the way, of elite individuals, rich folks as well. In 1954, it was comprised of bankers and international politicians who have met secretly each year since its inception to follow the plans of the Vatican. They lay plans to achieve the New World Order. So when you look at politics in this day and age, people vote for prime ministers, they vote for presidents, they vote for ministers, they vote for senators, they vote for congressmen, and all of these things. And they believe these individuals are the ones playing or governing. They're not. You have lobbyists and you have persons who own these people. When Joe Biden started, he knew of those things. If you go back to one of his early speeches, he told you that he's not going to be muddied by these individuals. And very soon they put him in check. Now, he's not the same Joe Biden that started out at a young age in politics. These are two different Joe Bidens. The Joe Biden of today is playing ball and he's following the plans. He had no choice in the matter. Now, these politicians have no money to run any campaign or to go up against those people who actually have money. Either you, if you want to be a prime minister or president or whatever, or minister, you have to play by the rules. You have to accept the rules. You have to accept the goals and the plans of those people that are placed in each particular country to ensure that these rules are enforced and are followed, and they prevent anybody who will come to delay their plans. So if I decide to run for politics, either in order for me to win, I have to follow their plans. And if I'm likable enough by the populace, they will back me up with finance to ensure that I win. When I win, I owe them. They own me. And every decision they tell me to take, I have to take. Every decision they bring towards me or tell me that, okay, this is the UN's plan and I have to follow it, I have to do it or whatnot. And to some, naive prime ministers or ministers, they will probably follow this plan and say, well, it's the UN plan, so it's the global plan, and they believe in the global thing, and they believe in the whole global thing. So they're not going to fight against it because they're clueless as to where this is leading or how it is tied to prophecy. So, now that year, 1954, Senator William Jenner said, "Today, the path to total dictatorship in the United States can be laid by strictly legal means, unseen and unheard by the Congress, the president, or the people. Outwardly, we have a constitutional government. We have operating within our government and political system another body representing another form of government. A bureaucratic elite which believes our constitution is outmoded and is sure that it is the winning side." So this senator tells you what I just explained to you, that yes, you have presidents, you have a political system, a government system, but within that body, there is another body that's pulling the strings, that is fighting to repudiate the Constitution of the United States, that is fighting to get rid of that Constitution and to replace it with something else, that is fighting to ensure that their goals and plans are implemented. He continues and he says, "All the strange developments in the foreign policy agreements may be traced to this group who are going to make us over to suit their pleasure. This political action group has its own local political support organizations, its own pressure groups, its own vested interests, its foothold within our government, and its own propaganda apparatus." Propaganda apparatus? Well, yes. 1966, they began the propaganda apparatus by dismissing anyone who is basically exposing their real agenda, their real goals, and calling them conspiracy theorists. So do you see what he's saying here? All the branches of government could be bypassed for the New World Order. No one is going to be above this group because this group has its tentacles in every aspect of government. And so much so, they have taken over completely every aspect of government in the United States. The United States is just a puppet for them right now. In 1959, a book, The Mid-Century Challenge to U.S. Foreign Policy, is published, sponsored by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, New York. It explained that the U.S. cannot escape and indeed should welcome the task which history has imposed on us. And pay attention to this. This is the task of helping to shape a new world order. When was that? 1959. In all its dimensions, spiritual, economic, political, social, aspects. And then we have a New World Order began to be labeled as a conspiracy from 1966. So the New York Magazine tells you the timeline from when these conspiracy theories came. And it started, according to them, in 1966. But prior to that, we have just seen the talk was there long before. Why wasn't it presented as a conspiracy from way in the 1920s, from the encyclicals, from Alice Bailey, from Roosevelt, and from this sinister group that is within the governments pulling the strings? It is only when people started to really talk about the sinister goals, which was a threat to their plan, that they began to use their propaganda machine to dismiss those persons as conspiracies so that people will not take them seriously. So then we have President Eisenhower, who began to envision a centralized government when in September 1960, he signed Senate Joint Resolution 170, which promotes the concept of a federal Atlantic Union. Later, in an address entitled "The Goal is Government of All the World," Atlantic Union Committee Treasurer Elmo Roper revealed the expanding interest of that committee. And this is what he says: "For it becomes clear that the first step toward world government cannot be completed until we have advanced on the four fronts." And what did he say? The steps toward world government, they cannot be completed until we have advanced on the four fronts. In other words, the infrastructure has to be put in place on four fronts in order for the global government to be realized. The economic, the military, the political, and the social. These are the four fronts. So you have to put a one-world economy in place. The military has to also be in place. The political has to. So under social, political means the government, one world government. Military means the power that's there to be able to put people in check, that will rise up against the system. The economy means the ability to prevent you from buying and selling, to be able to control how you live, to have the control over that, to be able to dictate and to ensure that you do not go against the system. These are the four fronts that they've been working on. So what we looked at with the DPIs cover all of those things: security, social, economic, political. These are the four fronts. Is this still a conspiracy to you? Now we have Pope John the 23rd. He ran from 1958 to 1963, when they claim that he died untimely. But nonetheless, he's the leader that initially presided over the Vatican II. Now, you would have heard about the Vatican II document. In 1961, in Mater et Magistra, and he stated that the unregulated competition which so-called liberals espouse is utterly opposed to Christian teaching and also to the very nature of man. Though through backdoor logic, this type of posturing simply put them on the side of the globalists, hiding in the shadow. Their collective economic documents are socialistic and in favor of a centralized world government, but yet they're playing both sides. And they're playing it well. Pope Paul the Sixth run from 1963, so he took over from John, 1963 to 1978, and he came to power at the untimely death of John 23. He completed the work of the Vatican II, which John had started before, and was highly respected in the international community. He published a controversial document, Populorum Progressio. The rule of free trade is no longer able to govern international relations, he said in that document. An economy of exchange can no longer be based solely on the law of free competition. In other words, it has to be controlled, and a new system has to be put in place which will benefit all persons, which is what his document is really about, Populorum Progressio, for the people. It too often creates an economic dictatorship, Freedom of trade is fair only if it is subject to the demands of social justice. This quote from Inside the Vatican, October 2012. So, who defines what social justice is? Clearly, according to Paul the sixth, it is through the eyes and directives of the Roman Catholic Church when this encyclical appeared. The Wall Street Journal noted that it was nothing more than warmed over Marxism. Yeah. And then we have this lady, Ayn Rand. If you don't know who Ayn Rand is, go read about her. She's one of those who was dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. There were thinking people observing what the Vatican was saying and publishing. They were paying attention and they were very, very alert. One outspoken social scientist and genius of public thought is that of Ayn Rand, who compiled a requiem for mankind on capitalism. The Unknown Ideal, which is made up of essays by many leaders, and she had compiled all of this, and in an age where you don't even have computers, she was able to do this. One of her writings was an answer to the papal encyclical Progressio, and that was published in 1967. She could see right through the aspirations of the Roman Catholic papacy and what the goal was. She basically could literally see it. Her words unveiled Rome's sinister drive for power. And she definitely did not hold back to warn the world. She stated, "The encyclical is the manifesto of an impassioned hatred for capitalism, but its evil is much more profound and its target is more than mere politics." And she's warning persons that there is a sinister plan. She continues to say, the Catholic Church has never given up the hope to reestablish the medieval union of church and state. With a global state and a global theocracy as its ultimate goal, this is the spectacle of religion climbing in a desperate attempt to recapture the power it lost. And yes, she got a huge backlash by trying to help people to understand what the Roman power was actually trying to do. And she continues, the Roman church state is a hybrid, a monster of ecclesiastical and political power. Its political thought is totalitarian, and whenever it has had the opportunity to apply its principles, the result has been bloody repression. This coming not from any religious prophet. The Roman church state is an institution recovering from a mortal wound. If and when it regains its full power and authority, it will impose a regime more sinister than any the planet has yet to see or has yet seen. And the Bible tells us a time of trouble is coming where there has never been one such as that one. And this woman saw this. Now, responding to this public denunciation, long-concealed pretenses broke out into the open. Rome's defenses suddenly came alive because a lot of people started talking about this sinister plan, and they had to curtail, and correct and use the powers that be, the government and everybody else, to even the fact checkers such as Facebook. They're still working for Rome, and you know that very well. Back in 2018 or so, or 19, these individuals would have met with the Pope, Mark Zuckerberg, and Amazon, and all of the media moguls would have met with Rome. And since then, there have been a rise in fact-checking on the internet. Some might be considered to be good, while others might not so good. So responding to this public denunciation of their plans, Rome started to respond and to build its propaganda machine. And Rome's defenses suddenly came alive. springing into the world scene in April 1968 is the Club of Rome. And you might have heard about the Club of Rome before. Founded by Catholic Aurelio Pesci, or Pecci, or Pecci, an Italian industrialist, a Catholic Alexander King, a Scottish scientist, plus a small international group of people from numerous fields. It emerged as a think tank to address global problems. And according to the Club of Rome, using the same map that we saw before, divided into 10 regions, global regions, they again brought this idea. Captivating is an administrative world map that they developed, the Club of Rome, which could regionally address these problems. Again, 10 global divisions were made, paralleling the 10 horns of the beast coming back. But the 10 kings represented the 10 kingdoms of pagan Rome, and out of which people Rome emerged. Rome is repeating history, using 10 global regions to give it power once again, to control. And one of the ways Rome does it well, and if you go back to understand how Rome controlled these 10 kingdoms back in the day, and if you study the 7 trumpets, you will gain the knowledge of understanding how Rome did what it did with the 10 kingdoms. You would realize that it sent out bishops to govern over these areas. So you cannot, similar to what Moses did, with Israel, breaking up into groups and putting certain leaders responsible for each group so that they can easily be managed. Well, Rome is using the same tactic. You can't really control the entire global power, but you separate it into 10 regions and to allow each region to govern, but you are on top of the entire government. So this map, it is not a coincidence that it is divided into 10 divisions or 10 regions. Now we have we're ending shortly. We have in 1967, Richard Nixon called for a new world order. In 1972, he visited China. In his toast to Chinese Premier Chow En-lai, speaking as a former Council on Foreign Relations, the Council on Foreign Relations member, he said the hope that each of us has is to build a new world order. The concept of globalism was accelerating. Richard Nixon calling for a new world order, yet why wasn't he dismissed as a conspiracy theorist? Because he's talking about a new world order there, and that's post-1966. In 1974, the United Nations sponsored a World Conference of Religion for Peace in Louvain, Belgium, in a summation report entitled New International Economic Order, supported by the General Assembly. It outlined a plan to redistribute the wealth from the rich to the poor nations, since Pope Leo XIII had already made that one of his objectives in his encyclical for Rome. So now the United Nations is actually fulfilling that mandate. 1974, 4 years later from that, Pope John Paul II was inaugurated in 1978 and serving until 2005. He had a keen interest in geopolitics. He quickly began to add weight to the voluminous social dogma of the Roman Catholic Church through 3, not 1, but 3 encyclicals emphasizing human work, conflict between labor and capital, rights of workers. Now notice once again the cultural tool of appealing to the working class and man's covetousness. Apostle John noted, all the world wandered after the beast, and the 10 horns received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Revelation chapter 13, verse 3, chapter 17, verse 12 to 13 speaks about that. The beast is that rebellious nation, the Vatican, which has a harlot that sits and rides on top of it. That beast and that harlot have placed their tentacles in every aspect of these 10 regions, using encyclicals by previous popes to get these 10 regions to implement those plans laid out in these encyclicals, working towards a new world order, working towards the 4 aspects: economy, security, what was it again? Economy, security, religion or social, and political. Controlling those and putting things in place to ensure that you have control over those 4 main aspects, which basically encapsulates the entire path of life of every citizen of the world, you're now able to put in place your full global plan. And that's what Rome is doing. And that's what they have done. Ellen White insightfully notes, prophecy foretells a restoration of her power, that is Rome. She will regain control of the world, and that's what we are seeing. We're seeing the how. We know the why, we know the what, and I have just presented to you the how. How are they doing this? They are doing this through organizations such as the United Nations, Council on Foreign Relations, Club of Rome, the Bilderberg groups, the Bilderberg Group, and political parties vying for. So you think that they're actually the blue versus the red in the United States, the Democratic versus the Republican. You think that there are really 2 parties, and in most countries you think that there are really 2 parties. Whichever one you vote for will still fulfill the mandates of the sinister organization that is pulling their strings. It matters not whichever one you vote for, their plans will always go through, because whoever wins the election have no choice but to honor these plans, because these individuals would have been the ones who would have financed their campaigns. In a recent international conference sponsored by the United Nations came this concluding directive: global governance solely based on national governments and their coordination mechanisms is not sufficient anymore to cope with the magnitude of global challenges of our time. An effective global governance is now needed. And this was in Rio 2012. So the Bible notes that the papacy will become its head. We know that. When the things that I mentioned, such as what took place in New York in September at the United Nations and the pact agreement that they have on global technology and artificial intelligence and the use of biometrics for the future, when things like that happen, you have to go back to the Bible to see what it says. And pay attention to history, because history tells you how. The Bible tells you why this is happening. The news tell you what is happening, and history tells you how it is happening. Because you have to only go back to history, which is what we just did, to connect the dots in order to see what is happening. So having the what, the why, and the how should be able to give you a greater understanding of what's taking place globally as it relates to prophecy in the Bible. This is the end of part 1, and we will continue with part 2 at a later date. We will let you know. I will let you know when part 2 will be presented. But for now, we have looked at the fact that, and I made a typo there as well. This should not be now, but this should be the NWO, New World Order. This is not a conspiracy. If you have gone through this presentation and you have ended up where we are right now, I have given you sufficient information to be able to understand that this is not a conspiracy. Rome has been working and influencing global governance policies since its first papal encyclical. These policies, once achieved, will give it back its power. global power, that is. And with the technological advancements and AI, it will now be able to implement the mark of the beast, which most people know the Bible speaks of, but don't know how. And there's been a lot of information out there that will make people think the mark of the beast is a chip, it's a biometric chip, or it's this or it's that. But I hope this presentation allows you to understand that these biometric devices and all of these things, these are methods by which it will be enforced, but it is not the mark of the beast. Thank you so much for your time today. We're not going to be taking questions, unfortunately, but I have spent a long time on this presentation today, and I do hope and pray that it was very beneficial to you, because this is a ton of information. And trust me, there was a lot more information that I could have put in this presentation, but time did not permit. And I think I have spent all the time that I could with you at this time. I try my best to keep these presentations about an hour long, the most an hour and a half, but I think I've gone to about 2 hours and a little over 2 hours. So I thank you for your time today, and I do hope and pray that you will share this presentation with others so that they will have the information as well. Perhaps you can download this video from YouTube, save it on your devices, and you can cut pieces from what I'm saying to share, because each of what I have explained can be actually brought down to maybe 5 minutes or 2 minutes, and you can share it as snippets to others so that they can actually come and listen to the entire presentation. But for now, I have to end this presentation, and we will continue with part 2 as we develop and we go back to history and to see how these things are being implemented to achieve the mark of the beast and for Rome to come back, because we know the Bible speaks of that beast coming back into power and staying in power for about an hour, which is about 15 days in prophecy. So we know that is going to happen. The question is how it is going to happen is what we are ascertaining right now, which is what we are investigating. So I thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for your time. We will be back. I'll be back on the Google Classroom platform this afternoon to discuss. You may have questions. You may have things that you want to say, things that you observe that you want to share, which this platform does not really give you the opportunity to do that. But if you'd like to join us, a link, you could reach out to me. The number is on the screen. I'm going to put the number on the screen, but this is not to call. This is not for you to call, but this number, you could reach me by this number if you'd like the link. If you're not part of our Google Classroom study group, you could text me on this number, whether it's WhatsApp or straight text, and I will give you the link for this afternoon's discussion, where you could share your findings, you could share information, things you observed, and your thoughts on this presentation. So thank you so much, everyone, for the time well spent here today. It has been really, really good, and I do hope that you were blessed by this presentation. Thank you so much. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing us to have this presentation this afternoon uninterrupted. I pray, dear Lord, that you will continue to be with us, be with those persons who listened, who watched, that they will have the understanding that is needed to be able to share this information with others. I pray that your name and your Son's name were glorified today, and that the information that was presented came from you. And if it didn't, Father, I pray that you will enlighten us, that we may learn the correct information. But for now, I thank you for this privilege and this opportunity to present your word to your people. In Jesus' most precious name, amen. Thank you so much, everybody. Until next time, see you. This is Elijah Anatole saying goodbye for now until we meet again. God bless.
Welcome to The Unpopular Truth with presenter Elijah.